Welcome back to another episode of the Lehigh Valley Prospects Field Hockey Podcast presented by Smith Sports Media. I'm your host, LJ Smith, and on this episode, I have the pleasure of being joined by Allison Fordyce, the two-time Landmark Conference champions from Susquehanna University. Allison, thank you so much for spending some time with me on this episode.
Thanks for having me.
This is very exciting, obviously, for myself, being a member of a Landmark Conference school and calling field hockey games and being a part of Moravian University, now getting to talk to the two-time Landmark Conference champion, reigning Landmark Conference champions, but you're third in your tenure with the Riverhawks. So I really appreciate you spending some time and being able to shed light on your playing career and your coaching career all the way up to now back-to-back conference championships.
Happy to be here.
So let's dive right into it. The sport of field hockey. When were you first introduced to field hockey?
Well, by today's standards, I actually came into the game pretty late. I didn't start playing until I was in eighth grade, but I grew up in a really small rural community, so it wasn't like the accelerated path that it is now where kids start a lot earlier. And, I started in eighth grade and literally went to a clinic at the high school, and my older sister had played. She was 4 years ahead of me, so she was a senior getting ready to graduate. So, I think I looked up to her and wanted to follow kind of in her shadow. So I went to the clinic and I had a great time, and that was kind of how I started.
Then, so you mentioned your sister. Was she a primary influence in you playing field hockey? Was your family an influence? What kind of kept you going in the sport?
Yeah, I think my parents were both teachers. I'm the youngest of three girls. Everybody played sports. It was just more about being active and being involved in something as opposed to being like specifically pushed hard to play a certain sport. So I think being the youngest, I was just excited to try something. My other sister played soccer and I had played that as a kid, but never really caught my interest. So I feel like field hockey can be sort of a love hate, maybe. You pick that stick up and you're either like, this isn't for me, or intrigued to try and master the skills. So I really had a great time and was happy to stick with it.
And did you play any other sports growing up? You mentioned soccer, but anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I dabbled in like soccer and softball, but where I lived, you played on the boys team. So, you're just kind of playing at a more rec level. But then in high school, I did play lacrosse as well. And that was a fairly newer sport at the time in terms of there was no rec leagues or developmental leagues at the time. So that was, sort of the same thing. Just picked up a stick and just kind of went for it.
Where did you grow up for that sake?
So in Harford County, Maryland. So on the outskirts of, I went to North Hartford High School. So kind of on the outskirts of like the Bel Air area.
Okay, so obviously Pennsylvania being a big like kind of hot belt for field hockey, it was expanding and reaching down into Maryland. So you kind of picking that up and learning it then, transferring that to high school, playing on a high school team, and now learning lacrosse as well. What was that experience like playing high school field hockey?
I think I just really always loved the team aspect. I did run track one year, my freshman year, and I wasn't as attracted to the individual aspect of the sport, but I really loved being a part of a team and, kind of collaborating and connecting with my teammates. So I think that when you're in a setting where you feel really comfortable, then you can thrive on the sport piece. So, I loved my coach. I loved my teammates. I loved the challenge of field hockey and trying to figure out ways to get better. I always have been someone who loved fitness and, loved the training aspect of whatever it is that I'm doing. So that part combined with the challenge of mastering the stick skills was always something that kept me coming back.
And what position did you play?
Yeah, so in high school I was actually a forward.
Okay.
So I don't know that I could still score goals anymore, except when I'm shooting on the goalies and there's no defense. But yeah, now I consider myself to be more of a defensive specialist on the coaching side. But back in the day, I used to be on the forward line.
So playing in high school, were there club opportunities in Maryland? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I think that I was on the fringe of that. It wasn't something that really caught on until I think after, my time in high school. So we used to do like summer camps and things like that, but there was no like travel or, club field hockey where for myself I was traveling around, and I honestly don't really remember my high school teammates doing that either. And then I think it sort of exploded shortly thereafter.
So high school field hockey, dabbling in lacrosse. Were you recruited out of high school? What was your recruiting experience like?
Yeah, so I did take some recruiting visits, and I think I probably was intended to play like at a small Division 3 school, but at the time, my parents, who are both teachers, were awarded a Fulbright scholarship, so they actually moved to Europe going into my freshman year of college. So I looked at some schools and went on a couple of recruiting visits, and I kind of figured that was my path. But then our family life sort of detoured a bit. So I ended up going to Hartford Community College, like locally, which was an NJCAA school. Now the NJCAA doesn't sponsor field hockey as a sport anymore, but at that time they did. So it wasn't ever the path I intended, but just kind of due to the circumstances and the opportunity that my parents had at the time to make that trip abroad and live there for a full year. That's what I ended up doing, and it was an amazing experience. I played for 2 seasons. We played for 2 national championships. We won the national championship my sophomore year. So not ever what I quite thought. And if you say that today, like, oh, I played JuCo, it'd be like, wait, what? JuCo field hockey? That's not even a thing. But it wasn't that long ago that it was. So back then we obviously used to play the other JuCo schools, but we used to travel and play a lot of Division 3 schools and Division 1 club teams. So it was a really cool experience. We were able to travel all over the country to play different teams in different locations. And yeah, we had a lot of success, and a lot of our players went on to some really great programs. And I'm actually currently coaching one of the daughters of my college teammates. So that's been a really wild experience. I'm sort of aging myself right now.
I mean, a wild experience. That's a great opportunity your family had, and for you, maybe switch things up for you, but a national championship. How
Yeah.
incredible! Like just thinking back to those 2 years, losing one and winning one. What's most poignant? What comes to the top of your head when you think about that experience?
Well, and I think I know that there's this photo after our first championship, which was on the road that we did end up losing. And it's, of just those like those faces, right, that you see after a loss. And there's a picture of like the athletic trainer kind of like huddling the girls together, having a conversation. And that moment stands out in my mind of just how that feeling, that loss, that emptiness of not being able to bring that home. And it was a game on the road, but then being able to win it at home the following year almost sometimes makes it a little bit more meaningful, because you were able to kind of take that loss and put it into your play. But it was a really cool experience, and unless you went to a JUCO, you probably can't truly understand. Maybe in today's world with the transfer portal, it will become more relevant, but just what that experience was like, because there's so much turnover in terms of like you're only playing with these girls for 2 years. But it was really incredible, and it was a great opportunity just to meet people from everywhere and to share that experience with them was really awesome.
That's excellent. So after your 2 year stint at Hartford Community College, where did that take you next?
So then I transferred to Towson University, and then I started coaching right away, still at Hartford. So I would go back and help out my coach and coach there. And that's really how I broke into coaching.
Wow, that's excellent. So during college, your college days, you were still coaching, and that's kind of how you caught the coaching bug.
Definitely. And then I started roughing as well. So, I knew at that point, like I wanted to stay in the game, and I had some opportunities to potentially go to some other Division 3 schools. But again, sometimes things don't necessarily work out on the path that you thought they would, but you just sort of make the best of where you are. So I was able to stay in the game and sort of stay connected through it in a different way.
So that's a very unique experience. You played collegiate field hockey for 2 years. You didn't play at Towson, but you got right in the coaching game. You're reffing. You're still around the game, growing the game, and learning
Mhm.
a different aspect of the game from the refereeing side.
Absolutely.
That's incredible. How was that experience?
I did not really take to roughing.
Yeah.
It was a great experience. The perspective has really, I think, helped me appreciate not only the profession of roughing, but just the dynamics of the game, and having a multifaceted approach to even coaching the game. But I definitely knew at that point, roughing and coaching, that I was leaning more towards the coaching side. And then at the time, I was still able to play club, so I was playing club, I was coaching, I was roughing, so I was able to have my hand in the game in a lot of different ways. But it was always coaching that I came back to in terms of choosing between the two. But I don't think that I necessarily am cut out for refing.
Yeah, it's so fully immersed in the sport, but learning how, like, reffing is a whole different type of thought process, especially if you're going the coaching route. That's kind of where you found your home. Now, where was that?
Exactly.
What did that lead you to after? Did you have any other jobs after you graduated from Towson? What was that like after?
Yeah, so after I graduated, then I went right to grad school at McDaniel College. At the time, it was Western Maryland, but then while I was there, changed to McDaniel. And so that's really where I continued to have opportunities to help out with coaching. I was still playing club, I was still involved in the game. And at that time, I wasn't really sure what my path was going to be in terms of, a job or a career. So I was getting a master's of education, and I think I naturally assumed I'd probably end up teaching because both my parents were teachers. I had some opportunities to help out coaching different things while I was there. And then upon I think I was getting ready to graduate or kind of towards the second year, I actually ended up going back to Hartford Community College as the athletic director, which at the time was absolutely unheard of because I was young, very naive, and probably should never have been hired for that job. But so that's really my first career position was the AD at Hartford. I continued to coach, both field hockey and I helped out a little bit with lacrosse. But yeah, so I was the AD there for 5 years at a very young age
Wow,
and still continuing to coach field hockey. So that's really where my career started.
that is fantastic. I've never heard that. That is so bizarre.
It is very bizarre.
But
I
how
started
much
my
did you
career in
learn?
reverse. Oh my gosh, I could probably sit and tell a lot of stories about this, young alum coming back to manage coaches that were, old enough to be my parents. And I don't know, JuCo, I know things change a lot, but it can be a bit of the wild, wild west, just with academics and the transient nature of just that type of school. But Hartford was always a school that had really successful sports and, really was thriving. But oh my goodness, I had to mature really quickly being in charge of, not only coaches, but budgets. And looking back, it was an unbelievable experience. And to have that experience at such a young age was crazy. And I'm sure the connections that I had there helped me get the job for sure. I knew obviously a lot of people there. So maybe I got lucky, but I always think it's funny that I started as an AD, and then became a coach, sort of in
Yeah.
reverse.
Yeah, that's a really unique and very cool experience for you to have at such a young age and almost that pressure being put on you at such a young age. You mentioned maturing really quick, but that also makes you prepared for any other job you're going to get after that. So what was your first coaching job after becoming an AD?
So I think it was about 5 years at Hartford as the AD, and again, still helping out with field hockey, but obviously not as, the head coach. And then I got the head coaching job at the College of Notre Dame of Maryland, which is just a really small Division III school. And so I was there for one season. I wouldn't say field hockey wise is considered like a very strong conference, but we won our conference and it was exciting and I kind of thought, wow, this is really cool. So from there, I went to York College, and at the time, York College had hired me as the field hockey coach, but they were starting the first ever NCAA women's lacrosse position. So I was hired as the field hockey coach to start the women's lacrosse team as well. So I spent 1 year coaching both, which is
Yeah.
wild. And so, York women's lacrosse is obviously like unbelievable right now. So although I didn't make them unbelievable, I can say that I did start the program first
Yes.
ever coach and had the experience of starting an NCAA program, which was also, I had no idea what I was doing, but somehow figured it out. So coach field hockey and lacrosse there. And then at the time, I just had my second child and I guess I was going to just continue on at York as a field hockey coach, not coach both. I mean, it wasn't very doable in terms of just like, you know, both teams getting what they needed. But then my husband, Brad, got a coaching job at Susquehanna actually for football. So we were going to make the move from Maryland to Central PA. So I very reluctantly left York because right at the time that I was leaving is when they had just built the new Grumbacher Center, which if you're familiar with the York facilities, they're phenomenal. So I had 1 year, in those facilities and it's such a great place to work. I had such an awesome experience there and I'm not sure if I'd still be there today, but it was really hard to leave. It's such a great place, honestly. And Katie Foss, the head coach there now, like she's amazing. She's doing obviously a phenomenal job. So yeah, so then we moved to Selinsgrove, PA. I had never been here. He'd accepted the job and sight unseen, we moved. We had, a toddler and a baby. We lived in a dorm when we moved here. Like we didn't have a house and I didn't have a job. And so for the first time, I kind of found myself really lost in terms of, I had been on such this fast track, getting this career started so early. And then all of a sudden I didn't have anything. And I was like, okay, well, I definitely want to keep coaching. So I randomly connected with the women's lacrosse coach who had just gotten hired at the same time we moved here. So I spent my first year in Selinsgrove being the assistant women's lacrosse coach. Then I was trying to figure out what my next steps were, never assuming that it would be difficult to find a job. I had a pretty decent resume coming in. So then I sort of dabbled a little bit those first few years. I coached 1 year of high school at Selinsgrove High School, and then came on as the assistant coach for field hockey at Susquehanna. So I've been at Susquehanna a long time, but this, as an assistant coach first before getting the head job. So I coached under two different head coaches at Susquehanna for field hockey until then I got the.
So being around the program, familiar with the facilities, you finally get the head coaching job at Susquehanna. What did that feel like to finally step back into the college ranks as a head coach?
Oh my gosh, I think I felt so prepared just because I'd experienced college athletics in so many different ways leading up to that point. And I loved being an assistant coach, so I think I started my career, like I said, in reverse. I was a head coach first. I never really was a true Division III or NCAA assistant coach. My first job was a head coach in NCAA. And, I really loved being an assistant coach because I learned so much and I was mature enough then, right? Because I was a little bit older and I'd been a head coach, like I was able to really see the game from a totally different perspective. And I coach under Amy Cohen, who's now the head coach at Westchester, who's obviously had so much success. And then under Caitlin Wahila, who's the head coach at Ithaca College, also very successful. So it was ironic because I had two mentors that were younger than me. I had already done a little bit of what they were doing, but then I was able to step back, and I am so grateful for that experience. And you always think that your mentor has to be someone like older and wiser and more seasoned than you, but I was able to have mentors younger than I, and it just really taught me so much about the game and just about, who I wanted to be as a coach. So yeah, I definitely took a twisted path, I guess, but it's been really cool to work under so many different people.
And thinking about that too from another perspective, if you're the head coach and you have another coach that has head coaching experience, has all this knowledge and can bring that to a team where you're not the head coach, how great does that have to feel for the head coach to know that they can not take it easy because they're still running the program, but like they have so much knowledge in their assistant coach already that it makes their job that much easier. You could take some of that pressure off of them.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think that that's kind of what I look for in my assistant coaches too. Like I'm really lucky to have worked with great assistant coaches, and I love that opportunity to have someone that, you can kind of hand things off to and, let them just go with it. But yeah, it was great. I had a lot of responsibility, but I had all the joy of being the coach without any of the administrative duties and
Yeah.
any of the worry. But I feel like I learned so much more about the tactical and technical side of field hockey because I was able to really just focus on the training piece.
Well,
So
yeah.
it was really cool. And they're both such different coaches, but they're both amazing coaches and so much success in their programs.
So your second season at the helm of the Riverhawks, you claimed the Landmark Conference title in 2018. Walk me through that. Your second year as a head coach, and you win the conference
Gosh.
championship.
Well, in my first year, we actually didn't even make the tournament. 2017 was my first year as the head coach, and we struggled. We accomplished many things, but you wouldn't be able to see them in the win-loss column in terms of success being, rated that way. So 2018, was my first recruiting class. And I was just like, I'm going to bring in as many kids as I can. I'm going to big numbers. Oh my gosh. I had the most talented group of freshmen that year and they were awesome. So they came in ready to raise the level. And I think that has set my recruiting philosophy to bring in the best freshman class you can every single year, to bring in talent that's going to challenge your upperclassmen. And our most successful years have been the years where we've had the best freshman classes. So that year was just phenomenal. We had so many great freshmen and they made such an impact on the field. And it was just like it snowballed. It was one of those things where things were going well and they just kept going in our favor. We weren't obviously, we were the lowest seed. Both teams won on the road. So us even hosting that year was, an anomaly. We had an amazing player, Hunter Pittman, who set a lot of records at Susquehanna, and we were just scoring goals left and right. We had the defensive rookie of the year. We just had so many. We were so balanced. It was such an unexpected turnaround, I think, for the rest of the conference coming off our 2017 season. So it was kind of one of those things when you win your first, like there's no expectation. We didn't go into the season like you always want to win. That's what you think you're going to do. But I don't know. It was really cool because we were just putting one foot in front of the other. We weren't supposed to do anything that we did in terms of, on paper. So it was really fun to kind of just come out of nowhere that year.
And then going to the NCAA tournament with your team, talk about what that was like to travel. Where did you go? What was that like?
We were like a bunch of kids in a candy shop. Like we'd never done it before. It seemed like all of a sudden, like, oh my goodness, you get spoiled at the NCAAs at any level, but even at the Division III level, it feels like you're being spoiled. So we played at FDU. It was a really cool trip. And it was so funny because again, our team didn't even know what to expect. I think when we won the championship, they thought, oh, that's fun. That was cool. And I was like, no, guys, like we're gonna keep going. Like
Gotta
there's
keep
more
going. Yeah.
beyond that. Yeah. So it was a 1-0 game, like one of those games that could have gone either way, but it was a really cool experience. And I think it all of a sudden then we realized like, oh, we're here and we want to be here and keep going. Like it really changed our program indefinitely. And I think we're still seeing the results of that year now. So I feel like that really established the foundation for success. And since then, we've really never looked back. We've been moving, I think, pretty consistently forward since that time.
Yeah, and looking at your tenure, the last 4 seasons, you've had 15 or more wins. So amazing to say the least.
Thank you.
And you also eclipsed 100 career wins. So congratulations on that. You're 9 shy of 100 at Susquehanna. All those, thinking back, just reflecting on your tenure, how important like is that? Do you remember all the players, all the moments that led to these accomplishments? Just reflecting back and thinking about how important, how special those players make your career.
Well, it's funny because yesterday I was doing an interview on campus for a media video, and they asked me, like, oh, conference championships, what's been your favorite? And I said, it's literally all the little moments like leading up to those wins that have meant the most. Like, I literally have the best players. Like, I love recruiting. It's one of my favorite parts of the job. Once you get the right players in your program, the success and the talent will work itself out. But we have had so many amazing players come through our doors. And one thing that I love to do is connect the present, with the past. And we, every year during preseason, we have all of our alums write letters to the current team. And at first, knew everybody, right? Because we were just kind of starting to build the base since I had been there. But now it's really cool when the 2018 team writes letters to the current team, like being the first champions. They're still rooting for this current team to keep winning and being successful because they are so proud of what they have done. So reading those letters to the team is one of my favorite things to do during preseason. So every practice we'll read a letter to the team from, one of the alums that I have coached. And it's been really cool just to look back and hear the words from some of those alums. And it's the same experience, right? It's different, times are different, things look different, but when the experience is great, it doesn't matter, what year you played. It's the moments in the locker room. It's the tradition. It's all the little goofy things that we do that build the foundation of our program. We start every practice outside the line. We don't step over the line until the entire team steps over together. And we've done that. So a 2018 alum knows what that feels like as much as a 2024 alum. And it's finding ways to connect them, which I really love. And I remember before the 2024 championship and even the 2023, being in the locker room and us talking about how it was about so much more than just winning a game. It was for, the community, the parents, the people that support us. Like they're all out there waiting for you. There's 500 people in those stands, and let's give them what they want. Let's make them proud. Like, it's not just about us, it's about so much more. And I think if we can have that mentality of playing for more than just, who we are right here and right now, it really helps connect all those years together. So I feel really fortunate. I love my team. I love my players. I love my alums, and it's really fun to get the texts. Like, I'll never delete a text, after you win, and you just hear from alums that are so proud of their program when you're winning. And obviously, the last 2 years, our wins have been very dramatic. We did have to get through Moravian both the past 2 years, but I think it's like those moments after the game when you're just kind of standing back and everybody is celebrating with their families and taking pictures, and you're sort of able to just step back and kind of see it all unfold, and literally, like, that's what makes it all worth it. Those moments, that's what they're going to remember forever. They'll remember the score of those 2 games, obviously, but they won't remember the scores of the 18 games necessarily leading up to that moment. But it's just the day by day, step by step process. It's all the little things, honestly. Like, you don't just show up and win. It's all the little things that they do. And I truly think that our team works hard for each other because they do have relationships and care about each other. And just being able to see them in those moments it's so rewarding.
I can't imagine how special it is to see the look on their face. And you've had the pleasure of doing it 3 times now in your tenure.
Sure.
What that look is, the relief, all those things, the parents' faces, the emotions that you feel, they feel, you get to see everything firsthand. So that's such a special thing. I'm assuming now you can't take for granted.
Never. And I think I'm a pretty humble person. Like, I'm super competitive, I love all of this, but sports is fleeting. You know what I mean? You can't stay on the top of the mountain. The air is thin. You got to keep climbing. So you literally, I never take it for granted. Like, I never assume this is just going to happen. Like, it's just, you just really have to enjoy it while it's right in front of you. But I think that, yeah, I think it's pretty amazing.
And to conclude the reflection of the last couple seasons and your tenure with Susquehanna before moving into the recruiting side of things, your current players, how would they describe you as a coach and your coaching style?
I'm sure they'd say I'm a little bit quirky. They'd say she's a little bit goofy, but I think I'm high energy. I really try and catch them being good and focus on the positive. Like, I am not a yeller. I am not a screamer. You can point out all day what someone does wrong, but that's not necessarily going to, I personally don't think, be the most productive use of your time. So I think they would say that I literally try and find the best in everyone and bring that out. What you're good at or what you bring to the team. And that doesn't really always have everything to do with field hockey. So we can focus in so hard on the skill and the talent and that. But every single person on our roster of 33, which is a pretty big roster, contributes. Every single person gets a ring when we win. Every single person's contribution matters wherever that is. I hope they would say that I bring out the best of them. And I think they would say that I work them hard, but I love them hard. I'm pretty blunt, pretty straightforward. Like, I see no need to sugarcoat things, but there's a relationship there and there's a trust. So they'll always have my time. They'll always have access to me. Like, I'll always be there to support them. And I'll be their biggest fan, whether it's celebrating a little thing at practice that they finally mastered or a big thing like getting their first job or getting engaged or having their first baby. Like, whatever it is, I'm always going to be there to celebrate their accomplishments. And, I tell them that all the time, like, I'm always going to be your biggest fan. I mean, it has nothing to do with the number of goals you scored or the number of championships we won. Every single person, I hope, will feel that way when they move through our program.
That's excellent. Thank you for tuning in to the Lehigh Valley Prospects podcast presented by Smith Sports Media. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, searching Lehigh Valley Prospects Podcast. You can stream the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, searching Lehigh Valley Prospects Podcast. Follow us on social media on Instagram at LV Prospects Podcast, on X at LV Prospects, and on Facebook at Lehigh Valley Prospects Podcast. Until next time, I'm your host, LJ Smith, signing off.